if you're driving through the country on a lazy afternoon.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. It is First Tuesday, so thank you for coming to First Tuesdays.
Sir.
I'm Mick, and this is Ben.
Hello, everybody.
That's Ben. Ben Joravsky, everyone. Ben Joravsky.
From the Reader newspaper.
From the Reader newspaper.
We always neglect to say that, Mick.
Yeah, we should. We need to say that a lot. I think we're told to say that a lot. From the Reader newspaper, owned by Rapperts, right? Part of the Rapperts empire.
Yeah.
Do you know who owns Rapperts anymore, Ben? Do you remember?
I mean, as in the individuals who were part of the
the investors.
Well, didn't Rauner used to own part of it?
That's what I was hoping you'd
Rocky
mention.
Works
is Bruce Rauner.
Bruce Rauner used to be. Yeah, used to be my owner. No more.
How did you feel when you found out that he had let go of his ownership of you?
I don't know. I think I wasn't thinking. I ripped him at one point in a post or a column, and then I later realized he was one of the owners, and so I was always kind of had a fondness for him that he didn't immediately fire me or something. I don't know if it works that way, but yeah, no,
apparently not.
Apparently not. No, they pretty much leave me alone to do whatever I'm going to do. So yeah,
that's a good thing.
But I think I found out after he had. Oh, I know how I found out. Bruce Rauner is debating Jesse Sharkey of the Chicago Teachers Union on Chicago Tonight about, they got into this discussion of privatization in charter schools, and Carol Maureen was the moderator. This is a long tangent. And she said, I must say at this point that Bruce owns part of the company that I work for. And then she pounded him a few times. So I figured, well, it's safe for me to, but I think I'd already ripped him before then. So,
that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I had another question about your activities. What were you doing Saturday night? And specifically, you weren't involved in an incident in which fires were put out on the Chicago River.
Oh, yeah. I was watching Dr. Strangelove for like the 10th time. And
you're being literal here.
Yeah,
you aren't telling us you were at the Chicago Fire Festival.
No, I was not at the Chicago Fire Festival, which is this disaster that happened on Saturday, where they spent all this money to have this spectacle, and the lights didn't, the fire didn't happen. They were going to reenact the Chicago fire, only this time it didn't happen. And was anybody there? Wow. Okay. I was wondering, like, why would anybody go to this thing? But
do you guys want to speak for yourselves?
Yeah, no. Anyway, I think it's sort of emblematic of Mayor Rahm's entire administration. It hasn't quite worked out the way he had planned, and in this last 3 months, he's scrambling to change everything. Become a different type of mayor. But anyway, I shouldn't. I did note in today's Sun-Times, home delivered every day, that Ed Burke is going to hold the hearing which is really pretty funny, you know. Like,
so why do you think Ed Burke is getting on this particular bandwagon?
You know, he's been watching our show, Mick, and he's just had a change of heart. I've always wanted to be a progressive, just like Ben. No, I have no idea what he's up to. I know he's up to something, though. It cannot be legitimate that he really cares about why, the fireworks didn't go off. So, no, I really don't know what that's all about. I'm sure it's going to end up costing us money. Every now and then, you and I, we talk about this a lot. They have these hearings, these spectacles at the city council, where to show their independence, to show that they're not actually just the rubber stamps that we all know they are. They will occasionally, drag out some poor soul from the administration who gets verbally abused.
Like the deputy commissioner.
Yeah, some deputy commissioner.
Such.
You know, you have to be accountable for this stuff, And then they get a nice little write-up in the paper. So somebody's going to get yelled at.
That's what this is all leading to, isn't it?
Somebody will be yelled at. So no, I missed that. I was watching Dr. Strangelove for, I think, the 10th time. Great movie, by the way.
Yeah, I enjoyed reading that story in the paper immensely. I don't cheer for anyone's misfortune, but the only thing I could imagine was what the theater director, it was like Red Moon Theater, I guess, was supposed to be in charge of the display. I was just trying to imagine in my own head what the conversation was like, what the call was like from Rahm or his underling to that poor guy.
Well, it was Rahm's idea. I mean, as I recall, it was his idea, wasn't it, initially? Or at least he championed
or
it. So.
somebody in his administration, he jumped right on it. Yeah.
So no, I missed the whole thing. Sorry, I wasn't there.
It's too bad. All right. Well, my other question for you was, it's a little trivia question. What Chicago area entity managed to score more points in the last week than a football team from Wisconsin?
Oh, Northwestern.
Yeah,
they won a game.
It's not the Chicago. All right, so let's first of all,
Yeah,
I was there, wet and cold, and very happy that Northwestern beat the Badgers. But the point of this question, in addition to cheering on the Wildcats, is that it wasn't the Chicago Bears. We know that.
Oh, yeah.
But it also wasn't a certain mayor of Chicago either, was it?
No.
Although, wait a second. Do I have this wrong? Did the Packers actually outpoll?
Oh yeah, I see where you're
Mayor
going.
Emanuel?
Oh
Or
yeah,
explain what
story.
this twisted tale that I'm weaving.
Yeah,
here.
no. I didn't know where you were going with that, Mick. Bob Fioretti. I think I saw one of Bob Fioretti's supporters here. So anyway, the great Bob Fioretti, alderman of the 2nd Ward, running for mayor, did a poll, which he so kindly shared with me, which it measured Mayor Rahm's. Has anybody seen this? They measured Mayor Emanuel's popularity, her favorability rating, and compared it to things that people would obviously not like. For instance, rush hour on the Eisenhower, morning rush hour. Fox News, which was a little misleading because I think they should have said Fox National News, and they just said Fox News. I think local Fox News is probably more favorably received than that. And then, of course, the Green Bay Packers, and I can't stand the Green Bay Packers. I found it astounding that they were only just a little bit more unpopular in Chicago than Rahm, which the real takeaway, Mick, is that nobody will run. I mean, Bob Fioretti is running, so I shouldn't say nobody's running, but that, like, this man is so obviously vulnerable to be. He's so unpopular. You know what I mean? But like major candidate, where's Louis Gutierrez? Why isn't he running? Why are all these people?
Well, he's running for president.
I'm sorry,
Did
he's
you
running
read
for
that?
president. Yeah, he's got his eyes on the big prize. So anyway, yes, Mayor Rahm.
I wasn't kidding. There was
polled-
a story actually about.
I saw that. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yep.
Louis Gutierrez is somehow.
Yeah.
mulling
So who
around
do you
for
like
president.
better, Mick? Mayor Rahm or the Packers?
See, it's a tough call for all of us. I would have to go with Mayor Rahm.
You're Mayor
I would,
Rahm?
Yeah.
Mayor Rahm or rush hour on Eisenhower?
Well, I don't drive, so that one's an easy choice. That's an abstract choice.
yeah.
You know, good and evil.
So you
or evil and more evil, or
so
something
you like the
that.
rush hour more than Rahm?
It's easy for me to say that. It's easy for me to say
I know
that.
it was the
one,
final-
one I know well, and the other I not as
Fox, National Fox with Sarah Palin and assorted birthers versus Rahm.
well. How long do I have to watch it? Because the other one I have to keep watching. I don't have any choice. That's the thing.
I think the point of the poll is that Rahm is so unpopular in Chicago that Bob Fioretti could beat him. I think that was the point of the poll.
Well, I think possibly. I think the point of the poll was that Fioretti got a little attention, and it wasn't just the usual poll. It was very creative. It was very colorful. And I thought it was brilliant. Just the fact that it was done was great. I don't know that it actually says anything, but it was a great statement. It was sort of a great entry for Bob into the race.
Yeah. No, when I was interviewing Bob's advisor who told me about the poll, I hadn't thought of this. You could have asked any question regarding any unfavorable things. So you could have asked about Ebola if you wanted to. You could have compared him to anything, which would be really interesting if he's less popular than Ebola. But
now that would be a little unfair,
Yeah,
wouldn't it?
yeah.
I mean, to Ebola.
yeah. So
All right,
anyway,
bad
no
joke,
Ebola
terrible.
jokes. Okay.
All right,
So
tasteless, truly tasteless. That's us. All right, I say we invite these other people up
To talk about
some politics.
governor's races,
Yeah,
yes.
why don't we do that? So all of our guests are here. This is great. Thank you for all of you guys. So Charles Thomas, Natasha Korecki, and Dan Mihalopoulus, why don't you guys come on up? Come on up. Yeah.
You got enough room? Do you have a mic? You can hold that.
I mean, look at guys are showing up in jackets and everything, clean shirts, jackets.
There's a reason for
Yeah, no, Dan and I go way back on this issue.
Well,
All right, Charles you were working, right?
Yes, I was at the UIC Pavilion where Michelle Obama spoke on behalf of Pat Quinn. and they had 5,500 people there, and they really did. They were party loyalists and campaign workers. I'm sure they got tickets, but they showed up in the middle of the day.
And you're impressed.
Well, you don't see, you don't see live campaign rallies anymore. Everything's on TV, and very sterile and very controlled. They get a few people and put them in a small space, make it look like they got a crowd. They actually had a crowd.
Actually had a crowd, man. All right.
I heard the line was longer for hot dogs than it was for Michelle Obama.
Oh, really?
Is that true?
I don't know.
wasn't there.
They put me in the press pit, so we don't get a chance to, mingle with the real
It was
folks.
a tweet. You can't believe everything
tweet?
on Twitter.
Put up by Bruce
It
Rauner.
must have been true then. All right, we should properly introduce you
Introduce
guys.
people, yes.
Natasha Korecki is a political reporter for the Sun-Times. That's right. Charles Thomas, political reporter for ABC Channel 7. And Dan Mihalopoulus, who is a columnist and watchdog reporter for the Sun-Times.
All right, okay.
All right. Well, it's a busy time, so again, we appreciate all of you guys being here. Wanted to start off, we were going to obviously go right back to the campaign stuff, but wanted to ask you guys to just talk for a second about how did such nice people end up in this dirty business? No, seriously, how did you get here? Natasha, how did you end up being the political reporter? Yeah, that's right, I'm calling you. At the Sun-Times. You covered federal court before you got into this, right?
That's right. And then Governor Quinn actually hired our political reporter, Abden Palish. I was at federal court for about 8 years, enough to cover the trials of 2 former governors. Rod Blagojevich went to trial twice, of course, so I covered both those trials. And then after that, we kind of ran out of governors under investigation. So I decided to start covering politicians earlier in their careers. So so about 2 years ago, I started doing politics for the Sun-Times, and feel like I'm still learning every day. But I've done the different political conventions and the inauguration, and now I'm almost exclusively focusing on the governor's race, but also U.S. Senate race, and already mayoral, looking forward. So,
is this fun? Is it fun to cover politics here, or do you get just weary of the same old stuff?
I mean, I often compare it to covering federal court, and it just felt like in federal court there was there's all this back and forth and all this spinning and stuff beforehand, but then there was a trial, and there was like an arbiter of truth. There was a jury and a judge, and you kind of realize like what's BS, what isn't. There's like fact finding, and it's like then you cover a campaign, and there's no end to it. It's like the spin continues. There's no I guess there's election day, so that does put an end to it. But there's no third party who's like the, okay, this is fact, this isn't, this, So I feel like I'm struggling with that a lot. It's like just like a lot of spin all the time, and wow, that person lied to me again. How many times am I going to be surprised by that? So so it's fun, but it's different.
All right, Charles, how did you get into this esteemed place?
Cesspool.
I guess I've been doing this 41 years. Yeah.
41.
I look and feel that old. And Andy Shaw was the political reporter at ABC 7 for a long time, and before him, Hugh Hill. Mm-hmm. And Andy had some situations with the management, and I think he actually quit. Yeah. And they asked who wants, well, they didn't ask. I said, well, I'd do that. And I think they kind of had to hire me because other people that didn't have as much experience doing this, they wanted me to stay on the crime beat. Mm. And I really didn't want to do that. I mean, I like politics. I love it.
How long had you been on the crime beat?
Oh, probably 15, 20 years. Mm. And I was pretty good at it. Mm-hmm. Because they kept saying, if you leave the crime beat, who's going to cover the hood? And I said, well,
Andy Shaw.
But as it turned out, I was able to do it, and I think it's worked out for the most part. I think I've brought some new things to the job that haven't been seen Chicago television. I think I rely on a lot. I rely on my experts, if you will, tend to look a little bit more like me. They tend to be a little more female. They tend to be a little more, I think, like me, because that's where I hang out. So those are the people I talk to. So I think it's really helped the political coverage, because I've noticed that some of the people that I started using as my experts or analysts are now showing up on other people's air, and they're being quoted other places. So I think of that as being something, a difference that I've made. Other than that, when you compete with these guys, it's real tough, especially her. He's good too, but he's more of your laid back, I'm going to get the big picture. She's like all over it. But it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. And it's been about 6-7 years. In fact, Barack Obama's first full day in office was my first full day as political reporter at ABC 7. Go figure.
Right. Dan?
Young Dan?
Young Dan has been a reporter since I was a boy. I was born at, what was it called, Columbus Hospital. I think it's a condo now that I could never afford to live in, on Wrightwood and Clark. So born loser, Cub fan. Dumke has no excuse, being from the other side of the lake originally, and I actually did know Dumke when
I'm fourth generation Cubs fan. I have no choice in the matter either. So.
Yeah, I guess I grew up in a sort of typically quarrelsome Greek-American family where nobody believed anything that was said on TV. And so I guess that predisposed me to investigative reporting. And somehow, despite the fact that it doesn't involve owning a restaurant where I could welcome all you beautiful people, it seemed to be something that my parents were okay with. And I went to the University of Missouri School of Journalism, same alma mater as CT over here, a couple years after CT, just a couple. And then was a reporter for the Trib for 10 years. Tried something called the Chicago News Cooperative after about 10 years at the Trib.
I heard of that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, we had a cup of coffee there, or a beer. The late great, noble intentions. And then basically the board of the CNC bought the Sun-Times. Not exactly the same people, but many of the same people. I don't think Bruce Rauner was on the board of the CNC, actually.
I don't know about CNC. I believe he
was on
had
the
a piece
board of
the,
Rapport's.
That owns the Sun-Times.
Right, and then when he was going to run for governor,
he had to sell his share. Am I correct? He sold it to Charles, I recall.
So that's pretty much my whole story. And now I hang out in the Watchdog Pound. If you guys know Novak, Fusco, and me, we share an office. And then the last year they started asking me to write a column, and so here we are.
Here we are.
Yeah.
And as a quick aside, I've known Dan for a very long time, and one of my perhaps my first introduction to you, Dan, was after you took my brother drinking in Greektown when you were both about 17 years old. So that's how I knew Dan knew his way around Chicago and could go undercover very easily. So well done.
Hey, can I say something? You promised me a beer if I did.
Yeah,
this.
is there anybody out there who would mind getting Charles a beer? Well, please, someone in the back. What do you drink,
just
Charles?
Something domestic, as long as it's wet.
Beer.
I'm not a craft beer.
Thank you. And while we're just talking a logistic here for a second, everyone make sure you're talking right into the mic. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's talk some politics here. The question I want to throw out there for you guys is it actually true that Pat Quinn is killing children? Because that's the latest accusation in the governor's race. Anyone, Charles? Go for
You can
it.
take this one,
You can
Charles.
take that one. You know, it really is pretty low rent. I've been so. I mean, the Rauner campaign is using 4-year-old material from the Dan Hines campaign in the primary of 2010. He's using the MGT push, the prison thing. He's using the Harold Washington ad. And now he's like, I mean, every governor since Thompson has had this DCFS situation. I mean, it's existed. I can't say it's the governors. But to try to lay that off on Pat Quinn, and this morning, I actually heard him say that he blamed Pat Quinn for 95 deaths of children in Illinois since 2011. He said that.
Yeah.
It's pretty.
They sent out, I think, at least 3 press releases today just to make sure
It's
that we've
like
all
he's
seen
run
it.
out of material. I mean, Pat Quinn comes up with something every 3 or 4 days. Like today, they had the business with the. Help me.
We discovered that, man. That didn't come.
Yeah,
from
right,
that.
right. Yeah, his story. Right. And
Wait, what did he come with today?
no, he,
What did you discover that he stole from you, Dan?
no, he came. Tell him about
No,
it. Dave.
Charles is referring to a story by our colleagues Dave McKinney and Carol Marine, and also the great unsung hero of Chicago journalism, Carol Marine's producer, Don Mosley. We give him a byline in the Sun Times. They don't do that on TV. But they had a good story today about a lawsuit that involved the CEO, one of the handpicked CEOs of GTCR, where the R stands for Rauner.
Yes.
And this is, of course, in case people have done their best to avoid this campaign. This is, and who can blame them? This is Bruce Rauner's, the equity firm that he was a part of for, 30 years or so. And we just keep finding out more and more about the business dealings of this company, right?
We're compressing 32 years of work. I mean, I've screwed up a lot of stories in 41 years. If you put them all
But
together,
you take
boy,
responsibility for him.
Well, there you go. There you go. You take responsibility for him. I mean, and it's compressed. I think, in his defense.
Well,
I mean-
if I could just chime in there, I think what was particularly different about this story, there have been a lot of stories about his business, but this one was kind of a rare look at, because we got, portions of his deposition and portions of other people's sworn depositions in this case, and there was, some merit to this claim that there was a threat that was communicated from Rauner to this woman, that if she went legal on him, he would bankrupt her and hurt her and her family. And I think that language was just really strong. And there was a co-defendant of Rauner's who gave a deposition, and he substantiated that claim. So that's what kind of made it more, because there's stuff flying all the time, and you don't know what to believe and what not to. So I think that's what really was stinging the Rauner campaign today when they sent out 3 emails about DCFS. Another way to look at those ads now, you just wonder, Rauner was enjoying a double-digit lead for a long time all summer, and they're really seeing slippage now, like some serious slippage. Quinn has now taken the lead, and even these polls that people were dismissing earlier as pro-Republican polls are now showing Quinn in the lead. So, I've heard more than one person say today that they wondered about desperation on the Rauner. People are just, we're slipping. What do we need to do? And the governor's killing babies.
That's what comes out. Yeah, nothing like highbrow stuff. Charles, I believe you told me one time that you actually sat down and smoked a cigar with Bruce Rauner.
Yep.
Are we being unfair to this guy? Because it seems like, and I've been part of this too, is that he has so many business dealings. It's not that hard to find something he's been involved in that's been in the court system, that's seemingly done something of questionable ethics that he's tied to, because he's tied to so many things. So are we being unfair to this guy?
I think the nature of his business, that private equity, what is it? They call it investment private equity.
It's buying and selling companies and pieces of companies.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
that's an ugly business. And the thing about it is, you have to be a fairly ruthless character to get involved in it, because if you're going to buy the company, you're looking for ways to make money. He doesn't make anything. He doesn't create anything. He just buys and sells companies because he sees an opportunity to make money, and that's what his business is. Now, when you juxtapose that against politics, the guy was tailor-made for a guy like Pat Quinn. He was literally tailor-made.
What do you mean by that, Charles?
I mean that if a populist, self-proclaimed, self-described populist like Pat Quinn is going to pick a candidate to run against, he's going to pick a guy like Bruce Rauner, maybe without as much money. But he's going to want a guy who's had the kinds of life experiences as Pat Quinn.
Yeah. So what were the Republicans thinking when they nominated Bruce Rauner to be their candidate?
They weren't. They've done this, and they've done this a lot. Now, here's the other piece. If you go back in time, I can give you names: Al Hofield, Ron Gitwitz, Andy McKenna, this parade of suckers. Blair Hull. He was
a Democrat, though.
I know, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
A couple of those were Democrats, weren't they?
Yeah, Al Hofield was a Democrat.
Hofield's a Democrat.
But the deal is that you have these campaign consultants. These are professional guys who make their money telling guys that, hey, man, I think you can do it. If the guy's got a big bank account, hey, man, you're the guy. I know, this is your year. And then you go on and on and on, and then they start having this slippage. They start losing. Well, I don't know, but you're $30 million in the hole by then.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't think anybody had to tell Bruce Rauner that. I think he actually believed it from the get-go. So I guess I'm really wondering why the Republicans nominated him over. I can't remember who did he run against. It seems so long ago.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Dillard. There's a fine
Kirk
young
Dillard
man.
and Brady, Bill Brady.
And then
Dan
Rutherford.
Oh,
Let's
it's
not
coming
forget
back to
Dan Rutherford.
The illustrious Republican primary for governor.
Well,
forgot
there's the other aspect of this is he ran a very successful, very, sort of straightforward primary campaign, and that was, I'm the outsider, and these three guys, he lumped them all together, and it worked. He was leading the entire time, and it wasn't until the very end where there was a ton of money spent by an outside group funded by unions that really started hurting his numbers. But Rauner, an outsider, zero name recognition, but he has unlimited money. Yeah. And, he's a fairly decent retail politician, even though he's not a politician, So he was campaigning well throughout the state, still is. He's won over some people. He's had some different ideas. And he's listening to his consultants, which, is my understanding, Andy McKenna and other millionaires in the past think that they're used to being the boss and they do what what they want to do, and it ends up killing them every time. And so I think that's why Rauner's gotten as far as he has. If you were in Springfield for the Illinois State Fair, as we were, a lot of people were saying that was the first time they'd seen Republican Party so energized in decades. Like, it reminded people of back in the Jim Edgar days. There was just a ton of people out there. You felt it. You did feel it. It felt energized. A lot of it was hokey, kind of staged with him coming up on his motorcycle, and then like an hour later he left, and you saw the motorcycle on a flatbed, and you're like, wait a minute. But you got a good photo op out of it anyway.
So Charles, is this a decent guy? He comes across to a lot of us, he's $100,000 a year wine club and all this kind of thing.
I had a cigar with the guy. I smoked a cigar and drank a couple of beers at this cigar joint down on Wabash. He invited me there to talk. And we talked.
Wait, was this on camera or off camera?
No, this was off. This was an off.
Just the two of you?
Yeah, just the two of us. Just the
As
two
the song
of
of
us.
us said. Yeah.
And
Grover.
And we talked. And he is not rich like Andy McKenna is rich.
What do you mean by that?
He didn't get it. He earned it. The guy went out.
You mean he made it?
He made it.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
There's a difference between making and earning.
That's why I like to say.
I earned my money.
That's my man.
Yeah. And I make a lot less.
But actually from that meeting, I don't. I mean, this was off the record, but I was able to get him to let me come to his house. And I'm the only reporter I think so far that's been out to the mansion in Winnetka.
Why did he wear white tube socks during
Because,
this interview? Do you think that he always wears white?
Well, because he's, I'm gonna tell you something about the guy.
That's my lasting memory.
Now y'all can believe this or not. I think it's wrong. I think it's a bad move for him to act like he's average Joe, $18 watch, Carhartt jacket, blue jeans. I think that's bullshit. Because nobody's gonna believe it. But it's real. He really is like that. He tried to get me to buy the beers. And I looked at him and said, what? You gotta, I mean, I'm serious. But the guy is
What do you mean? What do you mean he tried to get you to buy the beers?
he tried to stick me with the check. Man, and I'm looking at him, hey man, you invited me here, What do you mean? And
he actually said
he's cheap. He's really cheap.
Did he try to stick you with the whole check, or was it one of those things where he said, "Okay, you had
you
this,
and you had this"?
Oh
wait,
my
hold on,
God.
man. So and he does it like he had on a he's a tall, thin guy, so he's clothing, he's. I looked at his says, hey man, where do you buy this? He look good in it, and it was Joseph O.A. Banks. Is that the place?
Yes, that's where I get my sweaters.
Right. So, I mean, the guy didn't spend a lot of money on that because he told me that I will spend money on something that has value, but if it doesn't have value, I won't spend money on it.
Like those nursing homes?
Yeah, like nursing homes.
They got value.
Because he can cut the care down to Medicare minimums and make some money. But when I went to his house, I mean, I'm going to tell you, Bruce Rauner's house, the crib, it sits no more than 75 feet off the street. I'm serious. Now, when you think about Winnetka, it's some straight up $8-9 million houses in Winnetka. He doesn't live in there. He does not live in the best or fanciest house in Winnetka. He doesn't.
But he's got like 6 other houses.
He's got
right?
9. Come on, man.
Did you ever have to go to that neighborhood of Winnetka as crime reporter, Charles?
I could investigate. No, I never did. That was my first time in
Winnetka.
Yeah.
Streets of Winnetka.
But the guy, I mean, but the nature of his business is such is what he does is pretty cutthroat. It's a cutthroat business. And to juxtapose that on politics, I mean, Pat Quinn is having a field day. And I think that the polls are beginning to reflect that as we find out more and more about who Bruce Rauner is.
Well, is it unfair of us not to want a guy who's bought and sold pieces of companies to be the governor?
Look, I would say if I were Chip Englander and I was running his campaign, he told me and I wanted to make some money, I would say, look, man, why don't you make yourself into a Kennedy? Be the center right Kennedy. You know what I'm saying? Instead of this.
Wait, which Kennedy?
Any of them.
Joe Kennedy? He is like Joe Kennedy.
He is like Joe. But I mean, like Bobby or JFK or Ted, you make yourself into a center-right Kennedy and be rich. Yeah. Go out and throw the football around at the Montana Ranch. Invite some reporters out there to do some fishing. Hey, I think we're sophisticated enough to handle the fact that the guy's rich.
Instead, he invited Rahm, though, instead of us.
He invited James Meeks, too, the Reverend James Meeks, I believe he invited to go fly fishing, too. All right. There are a couple of figures or entities that keep coming up in this campaign, even though they're not actually running for election. One, of course, is Rod Blagojevich, and the other is Uno. And we have a couple experts about these subjects here at the table. Dan, why does Uno keep coming up as a campaign theme? Everybody's tied to Uno, right?
Everybody's tied to Uno. It's like, I don't even want to know what I would compare their former CEO to if he were, in my high school class. But everybody wanted
Wait, time out.
to hang out with Juan.
Dan, why don't you, I heard somebody in the audience, who's Uno? So let's give a brief history of you and your connection to Uno, because Dan pretty much brought him down.
No, I mean, Well, I covered. It's a community group called United Neighborhood Organization. It's the largest Hispanic community group, and it had the most clout of any of them. And it's been around for 30 years. I probably met Juan Rangel when I was in my first year at City Hall more than 10 years ago, and they were close. Their whole kind of MO was to get, not to fight the power, but to get close to the power until they become the power. And what happened with them was they used that clout and those connections to Mike Madigan, Daley, now Rahm as well, because their CEO was the campaign co-chairman for the current mayor in 2011, because he didn't know any people outside of his district.
That is correct.
When he came back to
I don't think
Chicago
he knew
or
people in
outside
his
of
district.
downtown. And they got $98 million, which was the largest grant ever, and they turned around and they did what we suspected they would do, and they hired their vice president's brothers to build the school and
Built some charter schools.
Right, their lobbyist's sister and one of the legislators who was close to them, his brothers got hired, and it was a pie to cut up.
And this is $98 million in a state grant
Right.
from the Quinn administration, right?
Right, yeah. Oh, Quinn was there at all the ribbon cuttings, so Quinn was close to them. Rauner gave them money, and I think it was about $800,000, which to him must be like $10 to us.
Yeah.
And then the feds, after we wrote about it, came in. Various feds. I think there are 3 different federal agencies that are investigating it now. The SEC, who else? The IRS. Thank you. I just wrote about that a couple weeks ago. And it's hard to remember. And the FBI now too. So we'll see where it ends up.
The reason neither candidate is using Uno against the other one is because they're both tied to Uno. Is that?
Right. I mean, everybody was connected to them, so they can't use it against each other.
Right.
Except for maybe, I don't know, Karen Lewis. She really hated Uno. She wrote me an email and said, "Thank you for being so relentless." Yeah. I took her to Greektown like Dave's brother. It's true.
Natasha, we keep hearing about the former governor known as Blago. And I will give credit to Bruce Rauner for saying repeatedly, he keeps repeating the same joke, but it's a good joke. The only difference between Quinn and Blagojevich is the hair. What's the truth to this? I mean, you covered obviously Blagojevich up close. Is there anything like what was going on under his administration that's gone on, under Quinn?
Well, first of all, sitting through 2 trials and listening to 1,000 tapes and all these witnesses and hearing every politician from, a committeeman to the president's name coming up, every lobbyist, every, everybody, state reps, deputy governors, you have it. Governor Quinn's name never came up in that trial. I mean, and not in any kind of nefarious way, not in any almost nefarious way. So, to the extent that, yes, he served as his lieutenant governor. Yes, they eventually, no, they didn't run as a ticket, but they were running together and were at campaign events together. You can, you can couple them. But to the extent that Quinn had anything to do with all of what was going on with Blagojevich, no. Now, there's this anti-violence, this NRI, Neighborhood Recovery Initiative probe that's going on. There's so far 0 link directly to Quinn. There's people under him, his former chief of staff, and so forth. And in fact, there's going to be a couple of hearings in the next couple of days, which is involving NRI, which is probably why we've seen so much negative Rauner stuff. The timing is not a coincidence. They're trying to, get ready for, they're going to, the Quinn people are going to now start taking a hit the next couple of days over anything that's testified to or not testified to. If somebody takes the fifth, for instance, in these legislative hearings the next 2 days. The other scandal under, Quinn is this patronage scandal. It's in IDOT, Illinois Department of Transportation, and what they found was that there was this system that occurred under Rod Blagojevich, where he was hiring people as political hires as staff assistants. You're allowed to hire people, so many people as, political hires, but then they would transfer them into non-political jobs. So it was a way of getting around this rule, and there's, a lawsuit pending in federal court saying that this was illegal. They want a federal monitor. And one of the findings from an inspector general was that this practice actually expanded under Quinn. He got rid of some of the people, but not all of them, who are these political hires that were wrongly put into these positions. So, yes, it's not to the level of what was going on, Tony Rezko taking bribes, all that kind of thing. And we don't hear him drop quite as many F-bombs as Blagojevich does. But, there's stuff going on.
I mean, my question was, what kind of a Democratic governor wouldn't have a patronage program? We always dismiss Quinn, but I mean, obviously he's onto something here, right?
No, but it's really stupid to do that after what happened. I mean, Natasha and I both covered the trial of Daley's patronage chief. We were competitors at that time, and if I may have such an exalted status.
My stories are way better.
And anyway, and so we were both at that trial, and before that they could say, "Oh, I didn't know it was illegal to hire somebody just because they won their precinct over whoever else, whatever other schmucks applied at room 100 of City Hall." But after that trial, I just don't see how you go back. I mean, one of the people that's mixed up in this IDOT patronage thing is a guy who testified when he was at City Hall, Carmen Ayaculo. I mean, he testified in the trial of Sorich, and now, he and his son, too, got jobs at IDOT. I mean, I know that there's a lot of pro-Quinn people here, including, some of our hosts, but hey, I mean, it's not too bright.
Not too bright to be a Quinn person. Is that what you're saying?
No, it's not too bright to go back to that same well so soon after the feds, buzzed around there.
Yeah, this NRI investigation, the $55 million that Quinn apparently spent in 2010 to deal with violence in neighborhoods by giving teenagers jobs and this sort of stuff. And it's under investigation now. But if you look at this Legislative Audit Commission, which is going to hold hearings to Wednesday and Thursday, that's why Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton are coming bang, bang. It divert attention. But anyway,
is anybody paying attention anyway?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I think that this really plays well downstate. Because they're saying he's giving all those black folks in Chicago a lot of money.
Right.
And everybody's getting pissed off downstate. And I think this helps Rauner's base. But if you look at that Legislative Audit Commission, it is made up of 12 lawmakers, 6 Republicans, 6 Democrats. There is only one person of color, that's State Senator Iris Martinez, on the Audit Commission. Everybody else is a white, suburban or downstate lawmaker, and they're all discussing or they're all debating the efficacy of a program to help Black and Latino people who live in the city. And I looked at this, and I mentioned it in a story one time, because Iris Martinez, by the way, has not attended one hearing since all this started, and that might be intentional.
But I have seen her
part.
at a Quinn campaign rally.
Oh yeah, but she has not attended one legislative audit commission. So if you go in there to these commission hearings or whenever they've met, and you look at this and you go, man, what do they know about how effective this program has been, regardless of what the state auditor said about it being mismanaged? How would they know what's effective?
Yeah.
Because they don't live in any of the areas that, or even have any contact at all.
Do you have any idea what Bruce Rauner would attempt to do if he were elected governor?
I do. I have an idea.
Okay.
I think it would be, he would basically be, he is a doctrinaire, free enterprise capitalist. And I really think that he would shake Springfield up. I really do. I don't think it would be any jive. I mean, he's not trying to make any money. I think he has a motive that's idiot.
Fucking kidding, Charles.
Huh?
You heard me.
What?
Fucking kidding.
I'm what?
Let him speak. Let him speak.
No, I want to hear him. What do you say?
What good idea could a corporate Republican pension raider have for Illinois government?
Well, I mean, I'm saying things. I'm saying he would change things. I think the same way he would cut services in a nursing home, he would cut services. He would cut Medicare. I really do believe that. I believe that. Did I say that was a good thing?
No, I'm asking you.
Do I? No, I don't think it's a good thing. No, I don't. You know, I do not think that would be a good thing.
So should it
No.
be a thing at all then?
Whoa.
It is a thing.
The question
I'm
I
just
asked him, what do you
telling
think? Rauner, he wasn't endorsing Rauner.
I wasn't endorsing Rauner at all. I was saying that I think Rauner would. I think it would be a war in Springfield. It would be reminiscent of the '80s at City Council.
Which were the
Between the
Good
Democrats
days.
who control the Democrats who control the House and the Senate, it would be a war. It would be a war for at least a term.
Well, I mean, I think the other part is we don't know what he's going to do, and I think that's what like the average person who.
I know what he's going to do.
All right.
Well, I mean, the average person will say, okay, he says he's going to freeze property, or he says he's going to do this. So how? That's where it stops. And I think that worked for a while. It worked for a little while. But now that we're getting closer and closer to Election Day and people want more answers, it's getting more frustrating to people. We saw that, what was that association, the retail merchants last week that wouldn't endorse him. I mean, that was
This is a business
that was
group.
a big hit. It's a business group. And they said, we think that he really wants to do things to help business, but we don't know how he would do it.
And just to recap for people who haven't been following this, he's basically, if I'm giving the Twitter version of this, promised to cut taxes and spend more on education and social services at the same time in a state that already has a massive budget hole and like $100 billion, I'm not exaggerating, $100 billion in unfunded pension obligations, right? So it literally, like, the math doesn't apply to what he's said so far.
The one
correct?
thing he wants to do, he wants to form what are called free enterprise, right to work zones. He likes this idea of right to work zones. He doesn't want it to be a right to work state. He doesn't. He believes that he can force right to work counties, right to work cities, right to work wards. Really? He thinks there should be right to work wards. And he says from his experience as a venture capitalist, he knows that manufacturers would go to these wards and that would solve the problem of unemployment on the south and west sides.
if they
Yeah, but that he believes that. He believes that. Now I don't know how.
Wait,
he
what would
affect
draw him there? The fact that there would be no unions involved in the workforce?
Right. There would be no unions involved in certain wards. You wouldn't have to have a union. So what if a manufacturer was paying somebody $30 an hour in Cleveland? Boy, and you can go to Chicago and pay, he says, $18 an hour. Well, he really means $6. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So he has that. That's the way he thinks. And that's how he will create jobs. You go to Texas. I mean, there's a lot of jobs in Texas, but they pay, what, $7.25 an hour.
I actually think Pat Quinn actually claims we're now beating Texas in the job
He
race.
does.
I think I saw
and
that
he loves
somewhere,
to talk about it because he loves to talk about Rick Perry because he knows that however dismal his own prospects are, people will still like him more than Rick Perry.
Yeah, better than Rush Hour. Mick and I talk about this all the time. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this. Whatever happened to social issues with the Republican Party? It was just 4 years ago. There were all these. They had these various tests in terms of you had to be against same-sex marriage. You had to be against abortion, and now it's evaporated. My understanding is that Rauner is pro-choice. Am I correct on that? Isn't that
Yes,
correct?
he's pro-choice.
And his wife has given generously
Yes.
to various pro-choice groups?
Yes.
So what happened? Did we solve all these issues or something? I mean, why are they? For years, the Republican Party.
So, go ahead.
Well, that's an excellent point. I was on Telemundo a couple of weeks ago, and they said Jim Oberweis está a favor de la reforma migratoria. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. I guess I haven't been following it that closely. But, you know, I mean, everybody doesn't want to seem on the wrong side of those social issues. They're just loser issues in this state. And they said, well, does that mean that there will be immigration reform? And this was before Luis Gutierrez was going to run for president.
Right.
I didn't know that Puerto Rico won independence. I thought Scotland had a referendum. But Catalonia, they're going to have a referendum. You know, and I told them, you know, the rest of the country is not Illinois, you know, and it just isn't that way for other Republicans in other parts of the country who fear these, and in other parts of the state, actually.
So the liberals should weigh, you know, it's a great triumph. We've won, but it somehow doesn't feel that way.
Well, but we don't know. Yeah. We don't really know where Bruce Rauner stands on same-sex marriage. He managed to get through the primary without saying what he personally, because he keeps saying, well, it's irrelevant. I don't have a social agenda. I'm just economic. And, you know, of course, you know, it doesn't really matter if you have a social agenda. If other people do, are you going to sign the bill or not? You know? And, you know, he's been trying to play it real safe on both sides because he needs those conservatives to come out. But to win the general election, he needs independents and undecided to go his way, and so he's trying to walk the line and mixed results.
You know, I'm no expert on Bruce Rauner, believe me. I have had a couple of conversations with the man, but the first time I interviewed him at his house, I asked him about why didn't you have any black people working at your company? I mean, he had 51 so-called non-clerical, if you will, people of substance working at his company, and not one of them was an African American. And I asked him, why not? He said, well, I couldn't find any. I said, oh, really? I mean, I couldn't find any, you know. So last time I checked, I think there are more English-speaking African Americans living in Chicago than any city in the country. Anyway, but, you know, I heard him say that, and I said to myself, you know, this isn't a racist, as in Knight Rider with a hood, and but he, you know, he didn't care. It wasn't important to him. As long as the bottom line and GTCR was making money, he didn't care whether or not he had any African Americans working at his company, because it's not important. It's almost an amorality about it. You know, he doesn't. It's not important. It's all about the money. It's all about the dollar bill. The Benjamins, yeah. And I think that's where he's now. I think if he's governor and somebody tells you know, hey Bruce, it's a lot of different kind of people. You got to get. He'd say, okay, well that helped me. I think he probably would respond at that point, but he hasn't responded so far.
But he's reached out to African Americans in his campaigning, right?
Oh,
what do you think about that?
He's spending money. He's spending money. There we go again.
Yeah.
He's spending money. He thinks that if you give him the money, you'll get the honey, as they say in the street. You know, but it's true. I mean, he made this $1 million deposit in a credit union on the South Side. That's how he deals.
That ought to do it, right, Charles?
It's not a
black votes sewn up.
He got you know, he that's what he thinks. He thinks he had a barbecue on 79th Street. Come on now. I mean, you know, this man actually had chicken and ribs on I was there.
Did you try it? But did you
No,
try
I did
it?
not try it. I did not try it.
And don't say
because I couldn't, because I was working. But he actually had a rib and chicken barbecue on 79th Street. Bruce Rauner did. I was there. We got pictures of it. Come on now.
We need to take a couple questions, but I do have to just share this anecdote. A couple weeks ago, Bruce Rauner held an event out on the West Side where he had a bunch of African-American pastors endorsed him. And there was a great scene in front of the restaurant where there was one pastor who the rumors going around, didn't get cut in on the deal somehow, who was walking around demonstrating against this thing, saying you've all sold your souls for some really cheap chicken dinners.
He said $100. What's $100 in a soul food dinner that you got? Yeah, and but that's how he's operating now. Bruce Rauner, I got to give him this, and you can give this to me if you want, but he has caused African Americans to have a discussion. He has provoked a discussion, and if he loses and rides off in the sunset and makes another $1 billion, he will be remembered for the guy who provoked a discussion among African Americans about the loyalty to the Democratic Party and what are you getting in return for it.
Well, Charles, I've heard that discussion for about 30 years.
No, you've heard it.
Yeah, I mean,
you've heard it, but a lot of folks in the neighborhoods have not heard. They've blindly voted. They've blindly voted and not really held people who they voted for accountable.
Well, I actually feel the same way every time I vote, because. So I can understand the feeling that of betrayal.
You've held Pawar accountable.
Oh, yeah. There's Mayor Pawar, my alderman, but I know what you're saying. That discussion, and it's just the alternative. I can understand why voters end up voting Democratic so much, just because the alternative is so bad. I mean, I truly would like to vote. Well, I was going to say I'd like to vote Republican, but let me amend that for the moment. I don't want to get too carried away there, Charles. But before we turn it over to the audience, I know there's a lot of good questions here. I just have to ask, okay, I'll put you guys in the spot. Who do you think is going to win the election? Daniel?
Quinn was trailing a couple weeks before last time. He's one of the luckiest people around. I think he's lucking out again so far.
So you think he's going to win this election?
I would guess that, yes.
Take a stand now.
You're not coming in the ballot box.
No, I'm not asking who you're going to vote for. Who do you think is going to win?
No,
Charles?
he clearly has the advantage.
I think right now Quinn has the momentum, and if he can get people to vote, he will win. His biggest danger is that Democrats stay home because they stay home on off-year elections. If they come out and vote, Rauner can't beat him.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like in this race, I get asked that every couple of weeks, and it changes every week. But this week, I would say Quinn.
This week you're with Quinn. Okay.
Ben, what do you think?
I'm the same way. If you'd asked me this summer, in fact, I was, there's no way Rauner's going to lose this election. But now I got to say, I think Quinn's going to win this election. So I've actually made a few bets on it. So I've already put the money down.
You got money riding in this
I got
thing.
a lot of money riding in it. Not
Ben,
as much as in the mayoral election, by the way.
Ben will attest that this entire year I've been saying that I thought Quinn would win. People aren't inspired by Quinn, but they're inspired enough to go vote against Quinn. I don't actually believe that. And an advantage to the incumbent. So let's take a couple questions. No offense, you've had your say, so let me get a couple other people with you. Yes, sir.
Do you think Chad Grimm with the Libertarian is going to be a spoiler to Rauner?
The Libertarian. Dan, you've covered the Libertarian a little bit.
Well, the question was, will he be a spoiler to Rauner?
Well, I've only covered the Libertarians insofar as the Republicans tried to get them knocked off the ballot with those guys that were, those security agents that legally carried guns that they just happened to show to the people who had signed the Libertarian petitions. There's Democrats behind the Libertarian or unions that are very Democratic, and I think that'll become clear very shortly. But it's already clear to me that they were the ones that have put them on the ballot. And, if he's polling 6%, I doubt a third-party candidate gets that. They always poll better than they end up doing. But I think, if it's really close, it could make something of a difference, much like Ralph Nader did, who maybe Ben voted for. I don't remember. Back in 2000.
Wait, you talking about which time?
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Which election? I voted Green in 06. Did you vote for Blagojevich, Dan?
In 06, I'd take the 5th. I just like people. I just wanted to see somebody with a long last name win.
I'll just add that, and remember in 2010 that Quinn only won by 31,000 votes, 32,000 votes. So yes, a third-party candidate who is, who the Republicans think will hurt them. Yes, that could hurt Rauner.
The Green Party candidate was involved in 2010, actually, and he still squeaked it out, right? Still eked it out.
County, Sangamon, and Champaign.
That's also correct. There's that right there.
Yeah. The topic you ended on about the seesaw nature of this race. Can you talk a little bit about the polling and why it's so schizophrenic? Does that say something about the resources being put toward them, the state of journalism? What's encased in the idea of the polls being really radically different at this point?
First of all, the state of journalism is very, very healthy.
Yeah, right.
Wondering.
Come join us. It's so much fun. Oh, okay. You made a wise decision there. And Bob Fioretti supporter.
It's interesting because if you look at the Tribune poll, people are almost wholly seeing it as an outlier. It was. They had Quinn up by the biggest margin. I think it was 11 points or something, and they had Durbin up by 25. I mean, no other poll has shown that. I think things just swing when they're doing, and part of it is the methodology that they use and how many sampling, how many Democrats they sample and Republicans they sample and so forth. And the week that they do it, if it's a particularly bad week for one candidate or another. So those things are variables. But, the one thing that I say, that holds true for the most part is that everyone, I think, on the ground thinks that it's going to be incredibly close. And when you see these giant leads one way or another, you kind of, it's more of an outlier poll. I mean, even like people who are diehard Quinn, they didn't even believe the Tribune poll, and they wanted to, but they didn't. So I think the feeling is just, it's going to be close. And
if I can say something real quickly, it was like 4 years ago. I think it was a presidential, 2012. ABC News would not. They sent us a memo that said we do not buy into this We Ask America automated polling. Don't use it. Don't report it. We have a list of polls here, and these were the polls that were more detailed and more expensive, by the way. I mean, the media took a beating in the last few years. The newspapers have certainly, and television has taken a beating financially. So a lot of people are relying on these less expensive automated polls. Mm-hmm. And Eric Cantor got burned by these things in Virginia because he didn't know he was behind as much as he was behind. And he didn't really work as hard as he should have worked because he was relying on these cheap polls. And a lot of these polls we're hearing about this governor's race are cheap polls because Sun Times, Tribune, Channel 7, we don't have the money we used to have.
And that's exactly what my question was about the state of journalism and the expense that's being laid out on polls that used to be much more detailed, much more comprehensive.
We used to spend $30,000, $40,000 on a poll. Now we don't spend a fraction of that.
Well, I will say that we did an automated We Ask America poll that showed Karen Lewis beating Rahm Emanuel. That went national. We were the first ones to report that, and we got all kinds of naysayers, and Trib was bashing it, and Rahm called it laughable, and then a couple weeks later, the Tribune reported the same thing with their very expensive intricate poll. So,
I was so excited by that poll. I jumped over, and I was the happiest man.
Unlike Fioretti, though, we didn't compare it to the Green Bay Packers.
No, Fioretti, that was a genius poll.
Eisenhower traffic, the Ryan, the Bishop Ford, the Eden.
That was good.
We got time for one more question.
Man, we're cooking. Right there?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Carol.
So, concerned about the future of social service, in particular mental health funding in Illinois. Mick, you mentioned that Bruce Rauner, and I hadn't really heard much about this, had said that he was going to increase it. Charles said he would likely cut it. I don't know if there's any hope for in a state of Illinois that's as abysmal for social service and mental health funding as Illinois. Is there any hope that things might get better?
Well, it's interesting because out on the stump, Bruce Rauner says, and maybe just says this when he's in Hispanic and black neighborhoods, but he says, Pat Quinn has shredded the safety net in Illinois, and he promises to restore it again while cutting taxes and all this other kind of stuff. The money just doesn't add up. But what do you guys think? Has anybody been talking about anything like mental health? I mean, it's these other kind of issues seem like they've kind of just not even been part of the conversation.
I would say I've heard it more on the mayoral race by Fioretti and Lewis, for instance, more than I could be wrong, but I can't even really recall Quinn or Rauner, bringing it up. I'm sure their campaigns will now send me 55 emails tomorrow. But it's not been, unfortunately, one of the big issues that I've heard them debate.
They've talked a little bit about crime when they're blaming each other for people being killed on the street, but that's honestly about it in terms of, we were saying not only social issues, but honestly like everyday how people are living kind of issues. It's really all been a campaign, it seems to me, about the money, about the state of, the state's fiscal health, and then about the two candidates personally and their resources or lack of resources, and who's the common man and who's not, that sort of thing.
Right, but how many of these campaigns put out like a budget in the campaign? I mean, you and I sat down back in the days of the apparently mourned by some people, CNC. We sat down with Rahm when he was a candidate. We had him come in. We knew what he was telling people, that he was going to cut pensions for, or push for cutting pensions for current employees as well as others. And, he didn't want to answer any of those questions. He cut mental health in Chicago, but didn't talk about that, obviously, during the campaign. So it's difficult for us. We can ask the questions, but we don't get the answers. And you remember how Rahm got when we tried to push him, especially the two of us. And then he got on the elevator with me and Ben LeBolt and said to me, do you remember what he said to me? He said, "Have you ever read Anne Applebaum's Gulag?" And I said, "No, I heard it won the Pulitzer Prize or something." He said, "That's what it's like being interviewed by you." And then he had this shit-eating smirk on his face, like, "I can't wait to tell this one to Ari." So, they don't react well. The point is, there was actually a point to that anecdote. They don't react well to pushing for details. And so, again, the Rauner stuff doesn't add up. And Quinn, did Quinn say he was going to raise income tax the way he did before?
Has he said it this time, even though he's going to? Not really. Yeah. Well, on that happy note, we have to end, guys. I want to thank our panelists for... Yeah, you have something to say?
One last question you were going to ask our panelists. I know I'm obsessed with mayoral politics, and we're here to discuss the great governor's race. But as long as I have three distinguished journalists on this stage, who do you think is there anyone going to jump in the race for mayor? Rahm is less popular than rush hour traffic on the Eisenhower right now. So is this it? Or is there going to be, do you think there could be somebody that jumps in unexpectedly?
You mean Karen Lewis? Are you considering her unexpected?
Well, I actually consider her expected. Yeah. So other than Karen Lewis.
Assuming her health is fine.
That is correct. Yeah, let's hope it is.
Yeah.
Hey, come on, man.
Come on. All right.
No, just be respectful, real quick. We're running out of time.
So, yeah.
No, I'm just referring to her being in the hospital the last 2 days. I think that would be one hell of a fun race if she gets in, and I think she will.
You think she will? Charles, have you heard any rumors of anybody else other than Karen?
No, there's Karen, there's
Fioretti,
and there's Amara Inya, who is in the house.
All right.
There are... I think the key to this is going to be who registers voters. And the more people that jump into this, if they start registering voters, when they register voters, they're registering voters who aren't going to vote for Rahm. And I think that, and I think that that when that happens, that will.
Excuse me, sir. You're being disrespectful.
Yeah, you're being disrespectful, man.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah. But I think that.
That doesn't stop him.
Okay. man. Yeah, I remember my first beer too. At any rate, I think that this is going to evolve. I think that whoever gets into a runoff is basically got a chance.
Dan, do you have any? Have you heard any good rumors lately?
I've been through a couple of these cycles. I remember when Jesse Jackson Jr. was the great hope back in 2007 against Daley. I think that it's hard to imagine that Karen Lewis won't run. It's hard to imagine that it wouldn't be, all due respect to Fioretti, between Lewis and the mayor. And I think it's could be a historic race because there really is a difference of views. I think Karen Lewis has to articulate her worldview and not just the view of the teachers. Not that they don't overlap in some ways, but I think she has to articulate, and I think she does have, like I said, we got together in Greektown, and she's got a worldview that we see around the country in New York and Newark in different races. We've already seen, your more leftist point of view. I don't know if that's a bad word even in a race in Chicago, but I think it is a more leftist point of view, and I think Rahm's point of view, worldview is much different, much closer, to Bruce Rauner's, and you can call it a centrist Democrat, you can call it Democratic name only, but that's how he's been since back in the days when he was the White House and he was opposed to immigration reform. And that's who he is, and so I don't think anybody else, I don't foresee anybody else jumping in.
All right.
Fun times ahead. Clearly, this is an unscripted event, so thank you all for being here and rolling with it all. And
Wait.
Ben?
I've been asked to do a pitch. I've been writing about this thing. It's pretty cool if you're an obsessive geek of Chicago politics. The Tom Keene Guide to Elections, and Tom Keene, the author, is here. If you're really obsessive about aldermanic elections, I urge you to check it out. He's somewhere around here.
Outside.
All right, there he is. Okay.
All right, thanks to Natasha, Charles, and Dan. And thanks to all you guys for coming. We'll see you next month on election night. That'll be fun.
You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial.